Hello and welcome to another episode of the Field of 68's off-season grades. My name is Rob Dauster. I am joined today by none other than John Martin, who is the most thankful man in America that the Houston Cougars left the American to give his Memphis Tigers a chance to have a shot at glory in the AAC. We're not talking about Memphis today, though. We're talking about Houston today. We're talking about the Cougars who went into the Big 12 and I think did something that no one really expected last year, John, and win the Big 12 outright. Now, they're going to be losing Jamal Shed, but they pretty much bring back everyone else that you could want to bring back. LJ Cryer, he's using the fifth year. Juwan Roberts, who is 87 years old, is using his 28th year of eligibility in college. Javier Francis is back. Emmanuel Sharp is back. Terrence Arsenault, fingers crossed, will be healthy. They added Milos Uzan from Oklahoma. What do you make of this roster? What do you make of this Houston team heading into 2024-25?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Rob, I don't really think it matters who suits up for Kelvin Sampson, I mean, he obviously has always recruited, a very specific type of player. Like you fit into a typecast if you're going to play for the Houston Cougars under Kelvin Sampson. You got to be tough. You got to be able to defend like crazy. And I saw that up close and personal, obviously, not just in their time in the American, but they played in the NCAA tournament, here in Memphis last season in the first and second round. And so you just see how they fly around and how active their hands are. And it's just, Rob, as you know, man, it's not really that many teams out there where they have every player that steps on the floor that guards like that. So yeah, the names may change a little bit, and they haven't much, as you mentioned, but it's a system. It's a system with Houston. So what's my expectation? My expectation is they'll be in the mix for a Big 12 championship again. I mean, I hated the way that their season ended. It was really
Yeah.
devastating because we all saw it. That game was headed for a Houston convincing win with Jamal Shed in the game, and they're going to the Elite Eight. And then who knows? But I still believe with the majority of the components that they're bringing back, I mean, they'll have a chance to be right back in the mix for an Elite Eight, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with you. What you need when you are a Houston team is you need a bunch of big guys up front that are going to rebound, that are going to block shots, that are going to be tough, that are going to be physical. I don't know where he finds them, but there is a never ending pipeline of 6'8" junkyard dogs that have 7'6" wingspans that all happen to end up at Houston. Like, I think if you have those measurements, a little Google alert goes off on Kelvin Sampson's phone.
Exactly.
Automatically have to go to Houston if you're a dude like that.
Yep.
So, I mean, look, Roberts is as good of a defender as you're going to find. Perfect for Houston. Javier Francis is kind of coming along there nicely. And then they got Jacob McFarland. They got a couple other guys, young guys coming in that could have a chance to end up developing into one of those players as well. Then you got LJ Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp. Like LJ Cryer has for 2 years now at two different programs been one of the best scorers in the Big 12. Emmanuel Sharp had some big blow up games this past season. Like you got what you need. Here's my question, and this is who my X factor is for Houston this season. This is the biggest concern that I have. Jamal Shed did so much for them last year, right? We saw what happened when they didn't have him available against Duke, and I like Milos Uzan. I think that he had a chance to be a breakout player this past season at Oklahoma. He was not that breakout player this past season at
Right.
Oklahoma, and I just wonder if he is. I don't know what percentage of he's not going to be Jamal Shed. Jamal Shed was the best point guard in America last year. He's not going to be that. But what percentage of Jamal Shed is he going to be? And how much does not having a guy that is the head of the snake defensively and the head of snake offensively, how much does that change what Houston's ceiling can be?
Yeah, I think it changes a lot, and it's new for Kelvin, man, because this is not typically what he likes to do. He'll pick and choose in the portal, right? Like but usually it's been like you organically kind of developed through the Houston program, and so this is definitely a little bit of a removal for him in that regard. Yes, they brought in LJ to kind of bring in that scoring punch. As you said, we're talking about you're the engineer of the offense. Jamal Shed's a guy. I mean, you can't replace just the institutional knowledge that he had about what was the culture, what were the expectations day in and day out, right? Like Jamal he started from the bottom in that program, worked all the way up to the most. I mean, arguably, I think it would be fair to say, Rob, he was not quite there, but in the conversation with most impactful in the country with guys like Zach Edey for
Yeah.
his team, right? And so you're now replacing him. So my expectation is that it will be a little clumsy, but my default setting with Kelvin is to always, if he's taking a guy like that and he's handing him the keys, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he knows that Milos can handle it.
Yeah, that's what I keep coming back to is he's not going to take that guy if he doesn't think that guy is that guy. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yep.
And I do think that Milos is a good player. Like we saw what he was as a freshman at Oklahoma, and I think every single red-blooded American looked at him and said, "Oh yeah, he's going to be a breakout player this year for Oklahoma," and it just didn't work out. And sometimes that happens. So um, I do. One more quick question on this, right? So when you lose a guy that is going to be or that was in shed, like he was the head of the snake defensively, right? Like his ball pressure, his ability to take you out of what you wanted to run, his ability to make you start offense 40 feet away from the basket, that changed things defensively. He also
Yep.
was the guy on the offensive end that made things easy. Whereas you see at times where Houston's best offense is a missed shot and letting those guys go get it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He was the guy that made it so you didn't just have to miss shots and go get it. And I don't know if Milos is going to be able to pick that up. So Houston last year was somewhere between like look, UConn, then Purdue and Houston is what
Yep.
everybody had, right?
Yep.
Clear cut top three, very, very good team in a different year with different injury luck. They're a Final Four slash national title game slash national champion, right? They're that level. Um, how much do they fall off for you this year? Like, where do they, without Shed, but bringing back all of these guys and keeping that continuity, like, where do they fall off for you in that level? Because for me, they're still like in that conversation for top five.
Yeah.
But I think this year for me, it's Kansas, Alabama, UConn for top three. And then you got about 7 teams that I can make a
Right.
pretty good argument in my head that could be top five.
No, I think that's it. And then, listen, I would probably have them there because just the advantage in on the coaching perspective. I would probably give them the nod. And look, I mean, their bigs aren't necessarily guys that you would ever throw the ball into in the post, but they just make such an impact defensively and physically that they will have their presence felt. Now, it's going to take a guy like Emmanuel Sharp. He was really good last year, right? Like he actually took that step. He's going to have to take another one. He's going
Yeah.
to have to do it again because his role is going to be certainly more pronounced and his shooting is going to be even more relied on, both he and LJ. LJ, we know, has already proven he can do it at that level, but can Emmanuel be sort of a 1B for Houston? Because I think that's absolutely the role he's going to have to
He had
play.
he had moments of it last year, but there
Yeah,
are also
yeah,
times where you had a couple of these 0 for 7, 3 for
yep.
15 performances, right? And we saw
They
that
can't
pop up.
afford that from him next year, right?
Yes.
Like they just don't have the fire. They had trouble scoring with Shed. I mean, it's not like they were just this, dynamite offense all the time. Like you said, like their best offense was off a mess. That's kind of where they lived. And that's probably going to be the way they live again. I mean, that is the Houston brand, right? We're going to play our style and we're going to play our style better than you are going to play yours. And what, 90% of the time, 92% of the time, that's going to be the result, right? They're going to get the result. But yeah, I think I would probably have them maybe vying for 4 or 5. I think I'd be comfortable with that for sure.
Whether you are a world class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well being and proper recovery for top notch performance. After a 6-month season loaded with cross country travel, I can promise you that proper recovery is a priority for me these days. That's why I'm excited that Unified Healing is sponsoring this episode of the Field of 68. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by Energy Enhancement System, or the EE system. If you haven't heard of the EE system yet, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in New Jersey or at one of the hundreds of other locations across the globe, access to a center is easy and affordable. If you're interested in experiencing the EE system technology for yourself, go to unifiedhealing.com/unified68 to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/UNIFYD, the number 6, the number 8. No material or testimonials on the Unified Healing website are intended to be viewed as medical advice or as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment, and before undertaking a new healthcare regimen, including the EE system. Yeah, I think you could legitimately argue that they're the fourth best team in America, and I think you could also, well, let this big picture, Big 12, right? Kansas probably going to be the team that's the favorite heading into the season, but then you
Yes.
also have Baylor, who looks like they're
Yep.
going to be really, really good.
Yep.
You have, hold on, let me bring up the Big 12 to make sure I'm not forgetting anybody.
Baylor's a problem. Baylor is going to be a problem.
Iowa State brings basically
Yep.
everybody back, right? From a
Yep.
team that finished second in that league all by themselves last year. I think that Texas Tech is a team that is going to be much better than people realize, right? And I would also put Kansas State and BYU in the conversation for like potential top 25-ish kind of teams. But for me,
Right.
it's the top 4: Houston, Kansas, Iowa State, Baylor. Plus, oh, by the way, there's this team named Arizona. I don't know if you ever heard of them, John. They're also joining
Yeah.
the league this year. There's
Right.
legitimately 5 teams that could be in the top 10 and maybe 8 or 9 that could be in the top 25. So that's a long-winded way of saying what would you consider successful? Because I think you can be a 2 seed this year and be the 5th seed in the Big 12 tournament overall. I
Yeah.
think it's one of those seasons.
Yeah. I mean, I think being one of the top 8 would be a successful season for sure. I mean, my baseline expectation for the Houston Cougars every year is very high. And although yes, I will give them some grace for losing Shed, they do return so much else that like we really shouldn't pad in, much of a drop off, especially with the pedigree of Kelvin Sampson. So I mean, I do expect to be a 1 seed. No, it wouldn't surprise me if they were, obviously, as we talk about their fight for that 4th spot. But I would say, listen, if you're one of the first 2 seeds on that 2 line, and you're in the mix for the Big 12 the entire way, I would say that's definitely a season you would take. It's not a rebuild. It's definitely a retooling, though, and it's of the most important position and of probably the second most impactful player in America for his team. So, it will be an adjustment.
How would you rank the top of the Big 12 real quick?
I would have Kansas. I would probably go Houston 2. I would have Baylor there at 3. And like I said, I mean, Baylor could be the 2 spot, right? I think Baylor, and then Iowa State 4. I mean, I think that would sort of round out the top 4 for me. I don't really know, I mean, Arizona will be interesting to see. You know, this is a step up. I mean, it's a big step up for them in terms of style, in terms of what they're going to see. Could Arizona fight for 5? I think that's kind of where I would be shooting for them. So I think I would go Kansas. I would go Houston, Baylor, Iowa State, and then I'll say Arizona finds a way to finish 5th. How about that?
Yeah, I think it's Kansas 1, Arizona 5, and then you just kind of just jumble up. It's like a dice roll
Yeah,
for
not a lot
Baylor.
of separation,
No, none there, none there.
as
Um,
usual.
yeah, I will just say I do think we'll get to the offseason grades here. I have him down as an A because the way that I'm kind of looking at this, I think what Kelvin Sampson's thinking was is that Uzan can kind of be a guy that sets the table a little bit. You have 2 elite shooters in Sharp and Crier. You kind of let them run off a whole bunch of screens, try to get these guys open for threes. If that doesn't work, you got a guy that can operate ball screens. And if that all else fails, you got 2 junkyard dogs to go get on the offensive glass. There's a chance Terrence Arsenault might end up being back to Terrence Arsenault again this year. And you put all that together with the fact that they're going to be a top 10 defense in America again, and you have enough there to be able to be a top 5 to 8 kind of team in America. And if you are, you're going to have a chance to be able to make a run in the tournament. So when you consider all of that with who they brought back, 5th years for Crier, 5th year um, for Juwan Roberts, and the fact that they didn't really lose anybody in the portal, I find it very
Yeah.
hard not to give this team an A.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that would have made an A+ is if Shea would have used that year of eligibility, right? And I think maybe people expected him to do that, so maybe that was, you know, a little bit of a blow. But I
Hey,
mean,
he got
in
himself a guaranteed contract, man. My man is going to be making 2
yeah,
commas with a crooked number in front, guaranteed. Good for
exactly.
him.
Hard to blame him. Hard to blame him. So yeah, I think that was the only way it could have been an A+. I mean, in the age of the transfer portal to return 4 starters, 80% of your starting lineup on a team like that, it's absolutely and that's not the average experience in college basketball, as you well know. So I think Houston, even in losing a guy like Shed, has probably had one of the best off seasons in college basketball, just by virtue of nothing happening with their roster, right? Like that's the thing about it, is you're bringing back every other piece except Shed. So I would say absolutely, to retain that, you have to have an A.
Yep, good. I'm glad we're on the same page there. Houston, surprise, surprise, is going to be competing for championships all season long. John, I always appreciate you being here, man.
Yes, sir.